whiplash hurts. Whether you're talking about while you're driving and you suddenly go from 100 miles an hour to 0 because you ran into something or someone, or if you're reading a student response and the student is either whiplashing the reader because they never stop for punctuation, which is called a run-on, or because you never stop and camp out on an idea and explain what you mean by the idea, your answer to the question. So the comparison between the old days of a prompt that had a topic and you needed one idea in order to get the one, you had to say why and give example or examples, 1 or 2, in order to get a 2, because that's what the organization of expository explaining is. In order to get a 3, you had to develop your idea. So if you give me one reason, explain that reason. If it's from extended or an essay, if you're gonna use one example from the text, explain that text. That way you can turn a 1 not into a 2, but you'll get up to 3 points because you're taking the time to explain the example from the text you're going to use. If you're talking about your own life and you're going to use an example from your life on an actual expository essay, then you have to explain your example. We don't want what's called exampletory, where you give lots of examples, but don't explain them. That's one example of reader's whiplash. But because the topic, the prompt that we're going to look at today was positive in nature, read about a teacher that you know, but the key word being the best, superlative, the best teacher you know, and you had to tell 2 things. It was 2 parts. And the first part of it is what they're hoping to see in the introduction or in the extended essay response, the answering of the question, who is the teacher? Answer the question. And then the second part is give the characteristics that make her a good teacher. In other words, use an example from your life, from your personal experiences of being in his or her class, why they are that good teacher or best. And in the same way, in an extended or essay response, if you decide to use 2 examples from the text, the reader is going to expect you to explain both of those examples if you're going to try and connect them to the answer of your question. Now, because the prompt was positive, you're also going to whiplash the reader if you give negative examples or ideas about this best teacher that you wrote about. And so the student that we're going to look at today, he got a 1 from 2 different people. And this is how expository used to work in 4th and 7th and still does in 9th and 10th. If those 2 people gave you a 1, they added them together to make a total of 2. And that's how many points you would get on your response. Now, if you only got 2 points on expository, remember that it's 1 point from each grader. In order to get 2 points on a short answer, you can't just say what the answer is. You have to tell where you found it and use the example from the text that you're going to use to say why your answer is correct. But you don't want to give too many examples from the text if you're trying to move the 2 to a 3 with an extended or essay response. So the best way I can explain this and show you the different ways that the students can whiplash the reader if they're not careful is by making it visual for you. I'm going to use color coding and Skittles to count the quantity of the details and the quality of them. So let's take a look. I went ahead and went to the archive section of the writing portion of the test, since expository is no longer tested in 4th or 7th grade. When you go to the writing portion of the Texas Education Agency website, click on writing, then scroll to the bottom, you'll see archives, and you'll be able to print out the 4th grade scoring guides from all the years for expository, and the same as 7th grade. Now, just for those of you that are not aware, in the old days, you were responding to a prompt that was separate and isolated from the reading passage. They just wrote the word expository on the top. In order to get a 1, you see the word ID, the letter I there. We needed one idea about the topic, and ORY could be one reason why. If you give me a reason, then give me an EX, give me an example, and you can turn your 1 into a 2. Explain that example, and you can turn that 2 into a 3. Whether, and again, that same thing works with extended and essay responses. Because in writing, you could also get a 4. 1, 2, 3, 4 gets a good score. You would want to explode your answer to impress the reader. And I'll show you that real quickly in the prompt. But our focus today is going to be to make sure, and there's my little Smarty, so we can count the quantity and the quality. I'm going to skip right past the read and the think section, because section 1 is the read all the time. Section 2 is the think, and section 3 is the write. That's where the topic is, what you're going to call the question in the extended and essay portion. So here's the topic, sort of like the question. Write about the best teacher, positive, that you know. And so right away, because of that word best, opinion, we've got to start thinking about positive characteristics, traits, personalities about a teacher. It did not say it had to be a teacher from school. It could have been a teacher from church. It could have been a teacher from life. It did not matter. Someone who explains how to do something. My son has a teacher who's a private tutor that helps him, become a great bass player in orchestra. And so he could have chosen an outside the box answer as long as he can use that example from his life. And so the first part, get the 1, tell who it is. What is the answer to the question? That usually means you might want to give that teacher a name. turning a common noun into a proper noun. The second portion, in order to get a 2 or higher, explain the characteristics. Don't just give me lots of reasons and lots of examples. Explain the characteristics that make this person a good teacher. And again, that word good and that word best, those are both positive. So you want to stick to positive by not whiplashing the reader by saying anything negative, because that would be getting away from the topic. I'm going to make an O on my head and make a little Q in it. The question is like the topic. And so hopefully you can give one idea. And so basically the student scoring rubric was the bottom portion. How to get a 1 is the first bullet. So your hand has 5 fingers. How to get a 1. Clearly state your central idea. Who is that teacher? And if they can find that, hopefully you can get a 1 or more. But there is a section that says 9 reasons for getting zeros. If there's not enough quantity, if there's not enough there to score, I like Mrs. Garza. That might not be enough to check the overall quality of your writing. So the organization is to get a 2. What you're going to do is, why do you feel like this person is your favorite teacher? What examples can you use? And so when you say, why is the answer that you wrote the answer to your question, then you have to go straight to the text on a reading passage and give examples from the text. And this student that we're going to look at chose to give 3 different reasons why his or her teacher was the best or the good teacher. So there's a Smarty for the answer. Because she teaches me math. Okay, what's so great about her math? So in order to turn that 2 into a 3, if I'm going to give you 3 reasons, math, reading, and later on in a separate portion, she helps me think about blue and green and orange being the 3 different maybe reasons or examples. And so if you're going to give me 3 reasons, then you want to explain all 3 of your reasons. You want to develop them, because that's part of the grade. So if you're going to give 3 examples from the text to give your answer, you're gonna have to explain all 3 of those textual evidences, if you want to call it that. All 3 of those graphic sources, all 3 of those portions of the selection. Okay. Now, many of you are still teaching expository, because I can tell in my Teachers Pay Teachers, a whole bunch of teachers are still across the United States buying a lot of my expository materials. So I want to make sure, if your rubric does state the portion about choosing your words carefully, how many words is that? Choose your words carefully. 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, the first letter in the word words is a W. And if you take a W and you break it apart into 2 sections, you get something that I call the voice and the vocabulary. So in other words, don't just give me an idea, don't give me a reason why, an example, but explain it to get a 3 and explode it to get a 1, 2, 3, 4 gets a good score. How do you do that? With higher vocabulary, because you're choosing your words carefully, and your voice, who you are on the inside, in your head and in your heart. And again, you don't need this for an extended or an essay response, but you do need it if you're teaching expository and they give you a voice part of the grade, which is that fourth bullet, inside my head, my voice are my thoughts and my opinions about that teacher regarding reading, math, and the way that she helps me. Inside my heart is my voice, my feelings and my emotions, how it feels to have a teacher who cares enough to actually show me how to do math and reading or how to help me with something. Now, the one that is vague is the helping me. All right. So you get your 3 for actual expository for 9th and 10th. You can get a 4 by doing this portion, but up for short answer, for extended and essays, you can get up to 3 points, and then you can get from 0, 1, or 2 points by this last portion. Use correct spelling, capitalization, punctuation, grammar, and sentences. Basically, they're saying bring closure. Think about the word sentences. Kind of tie everything together, if you can, with a sentence or two, depending on how many lines that they're going to give us. Okay, so we're hoping, let's say you're a 3rd grader. Well, maybe since you're in 3rd grade, well, give me like 3 details for each of these that are the reasons why, or the examples from the text that you use. If you're a 4th grader, then give me 4 details or 4 sentences. I call that my grade or more to get a good score, because the older the student, the more they expect them to explain and give what I call specific supporting sentences for their examples and their reasons. Okay, so it's important that for the purpose of an expository and even persuasive essay, and it would be a good idea even on your essay to bring some sort of closure. How can you kind of tie that up? And they might not hold the students accountable for that as much as the first 3 bullets, but part of the grade is the ER, taking your paper to the emergency room of editing and revising and saying, which sentences do I need to improve the content of by adding, removing, replacing, or moving certain things. So we're going to be removing a couple of things because they whiplash the reader. How can I add, how can I make corrections on what many of you call the cups with 1 S, capitalization, usage, punctuation, and spelling, or cups with 2 S's, capitalization, usage, punctuation, spelling, and sentence boundaries, where you look for run-ons and fragments. So one of the reasons why this paper we're going to look at got a lower grade, a 1 and a 1 from the 2 readers, is because the student was whiplashing the reader. Think of a sentence like a street, a regular street. At the end of every street is a stop sign. At the end of every sentence should be a period, an exclamation, or a question mark. If you don't stop at the stop sign, you're going to give the reader whiplash, because more than likely you're going to be running into a car who doesn't have a stop sign, and it's going to be causing the sentence boundary issue. So the first thing that we'll do is we'll find out how you give the reader whiplash just because of your conventions. The cups is the conventions, the editing, and the arm, adding, removing, replacing, or moving things, is your revising, fixing the content. So what I've done for you is I've taken essay number 2 from the scoring guide and I color coded it so that you can see how long they spend on each idea. Let's first just focus on the ending punctuation. If you see all those vertical red walls, Those are all the run-ons on the paper. Now, does the student need to work on penmanship as well? Yes. Those lines are there for a reason. It's sort of like the road. And so several of the words have parts of their car that are below or above the line. So make sure that your students work on penmanship. If you're going to indent, you don't need to indent every single line. Why is the word Ms. Jones in a different format? So that the student and the teacher he or she is writing about has their privacy protected. Do I need to skip a line? No. Do I need to have a title? No. It doesn't help the essay. There's no reason for it. It's not part of the scoring guide. It's not part of the scoring guide on a short answer, extended, or essay response either. So what I'm going to do is verbalize the ending punctuation if they have one. If they don't have one, I'm going to make a break sound as if I'm slamming on my brakes and then crashing. So you can see reason number one, why the student got himself and the reader whiplash. Do you have a Ravert teacher, question mark? I do. She is my fourth grape teacher. Ms. Jones is her name. She helps us with for math and since, period. Mrs. Jones, my math problems teacher. Sort of a fragment, but if you have Mrs. Jones and you have the math problems being what she probably helps you with, you might want to turn that fragment into a sentence. Another reason, she is very nice, but when kids are being rude, she gets mad, but when she comes down, probably calm, but you have to write what you see. When she come down, she says, do I have my test? I don't, that my brain made me pause there, but a question mark because I didn't understand what they were talking about. She is not my favorite teacher, period. Repetition. So I made 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 red bricks. You already told me she's your favorite teacher, so you don't need to write that again because repetition is not development. It's just writing the same thing. So if all of these lines were layers of bricks, these 5 bricks have already been used somewhere else. And so it's sort of like leaving a hole in the middle of the essay because of the bricks that were already there. Don't leave them there by putting repetition. Say it in a different way since we already know that she's your favorite teacher. You told us up on the top, okay? Because she helps us when we need it. Now, if you would have told me that up there on the top, I would have seen, oh yeah, when you need it in math and reading, connect those ideas, but they're completely separated. When we are dismissed, I run away a lot. I saw Mrs. Jones in the distance. I don't run away a lot. In Sishan, comma, Mrs. Jones is my favorite teacher. So again, because a lot of you teach your kids to restate your idea and your conclusion, it's sort of like saying, instead of giving the reader dessert for the end of their essay, I'm going to give them leftovers. I'm going to give them something that they've already eaten in two other parts of the essay. And suddenly, I hope you do too. I don't know what they want me to do because it doesn't really connect with the previous sentence. But as you can see, this paper did get, let me show you on the bottom, did get a score point of 1. And whenever the score is on the bottom like this, it's from the scoring guides, which means that 2 different people give it a 1. And this is the adult explanation, but I like to help students see things in a different way. So inside page 507, show that to you at the bottom there, 507 of my binder, I use this scoring guide to kind of help the students see a second reason why we're whiplashing the reader. 1, because they jump from one idea to the next without developing. Number 2, they switched, as you heard, from positive to negative. Okay, so you've got Mrs. Jones as the teacher. We'll call that the engine, the central idea if you're in 4th grade, or the controlling idea 7th grade, the thesis in 9th grade. And their hook was, do you have a favorite teacher? Since all you're doing is restating the prompt, that's what I call restating the question. That's not a high quality response, because since everybody knows what the topic is, ask a question about your idea, about your teacher. Ask a question as an anecdote to someone in the class or at your house, or ask a question to yourself. Why did I get blessed with such an amazing teacher? There's nothing wrong with questions, just, and I'm not even going to put that there was a hook, because it's so worn out. You don't really need to restate the prompt by asking the prompt question. My blue, that she helps me with math. My green reason, she helps me with science. My orange reason, that she is nice. Those are all positive things that we could have used to explain. When kids are rude, since that's negative, all of a sudden she becomes my negative, not my favorite teacher. I'm going to remove that, because that doesn't contribute to the characteristics of what makes her a good teacher. She helps me when I need it. Okay, that's great. You could have put that. Maybe I'm having an emotional problem and she helps me, but they didn't connect that. Maybe I don't understand science because they didn't teach it until 5th grade, but they didn't explain that. Maybe there's too many words in the word problem, and the only problem with word problems are the words in the problem. There's just too many words. So because helps me when I need it is too vague, and the student didn't connect it, that's a great idea, but I'm going to have to put a different color. When we are dismissed, that whole thing about running away, I'm going to remove that, because running away in class doesn't seem to fit in with the positive attributes of Mrs. Jones. Okay, so there you have it. I'm going to read the essay, and I will be letting you stay focused on the train, the outline of the student's response, so you can see what is the second reason because of listing and talking about the opposite of what they were asking for in the response. Do you have a favorite teacher? That was the hook. And since it is a student who struggles, I might teach them to go ahead and ask that question if he's a 1-2 student. My 3, 4, 5 students, I don't want them to ask a question about the question or a question about the topic. I do. She is my 4th grade teacher, Mrs. Jones. She's my 4th grade teacher. Mrs. Jones is her name. So I've done what was asked of me, got some repetition problems, I've got some run-on problems. She helps me with math, all right? So I'm gonna go ahead and put a Smarty or a detail about math. Let's see how long, how does she help me? Who, what, when, where, which, who, what, when, where, what, who, what, when, where, which, why, how. I can give you lots of examples about specific ways that she helps me with math. There's a ton of different kinds of math problems. So let's see if she spends time on it. And science. Whiplash. I didn't get to find out about math. Mrs. Jones, my math problems. So since that didn't connect and make sense, I'm not going to give credit because Mrs. Jones, my math problems, I don't think Mrs. Jones is a math problem. So I'm going to, excuse me, leave that part out. She is very nice. Okay, great. That's another positive thing, but whiplash. I don't know anything about science. Let's see how long they spend on nice. When kids are rude, she gets mad. Okay, so let's see how long they spend on this. When kids are rude, that's not nice. So I have to put it in a different section. She gets mad. Lots of teachers will do that. Okay. When she calms down, and hopefully we all will, she says, do you do? I don't know what that means, so I can't give credit for an unclear detail. Do you do? I set my test. I didn't even know I was taking a test. She is not my favorite teacher. Okay. I'm not sure the explanation, but whatever happened, the result, the effect was she's not my favorite teacher. Now, the problem is here, they spent more time explaining the negative than they did on the reasons why she's a good teacher. So we have to remove those from the essay so that we can only focus on the positive. They don't want the opposite of the answer to the question. They want the answer to the question and the examples from the text that will support it. Next, another color. We don't have a new teacher that we're talking about, so we won't put anything there. Let's continue on. Mrs. Jones is my favorite teacher. You already wrote that, so I'm not going to give you any Smarties for repetition. She helps me when we need it. All right, great. Could she talk about any of those three, blue, green, and orange? Yes, but let's see if she or he does. When we are dismissed, going on to the next one, because I already read it and I know that the dismissal had nothing to do with her helping me when I need it because they didn't explain it that way. I run away a lot. Okay, that's not a good thing. Okay, now if they explain that they're having a bad day and that Mrs. Jones comes and gets her or him, calms them down, makes them feel better, and realize that everything's going to be okay, that would be awesome. But that's not done. I saw Miss Jones in the distance. Okay. Seeing her in the distance or distance is not really contributing to her helping me, just her looking at me. I don't run away a lot. Okay. So this running away part, seeing her in the distance, just seeing her keeps me from running away. But because they don't clearly connect these two ideas, it's sort of like putting a wall between them because I don't see the clear connection. They either have to explain that she has a calming effect on us. So if this was a story or this was some sort of informative, then you've got to say, I'm going to use this example to connect to helping when I need it by explaining that and making sure the reader knows how this train connects to this one. So since it wasn't done, I'm going to have to remove that as well. Then there's not another one, but they move on to the conclusion by saying, Mrs. In conclusion, that's their transition. Is that a creative transition? No, but it's one that you would expect from a 1-2 student, a struggling student. Is the conclusion missing? No, but they use restating by writing something they've already written. Mrs. Jones is my favorite teacher. I would have 4 little bricks there. And again, like I said, that would be like leftovers instead of dessert. I hope you do too. I'm not going to give credit for that because I don't see, I hope you do too. I hope that you have a favorite teacher. Maybe that's what they meant, but we can't infer, we can't, if our last sentence is, I hope you do too, we can't infer, we can't infer, rubbing my fur, we can't read between the lines to think, oh, I know what she means or he means, that I hope you have one like her. So everything that I said with my mouth, if I'm giving feedback on how to help this turn this 1 into a 2, because my name is not Jesus or Superman or woman, I just want to be able to help them by zooming in on just the math, the science, and that she's nice. And somehow, while I'm talking about those, she helps me when I need it on math or science, or when I'm having an emotional problem, she helps me during dismissal. Let's connect all those 3. Or instead of trying to have 3 reasons and explaining them all, let's focus on 1 reason, whichever one that your student, ask your student questions about which one they can tell you the most about with your mouth, because if they can only tell you 1 or 2 details about her math skills and how and what and where and when she does help you with math when you need it, then you would ask questions about science or how nice she is and see which one can they give you the most with their mouth. Because if I can get them to give me 5 to 10 details with their mouth, then hopefully they can at least write 3 to 5 with their pencil, and they can turn the 1 into a 2. And we might say, may the 2s be with you, because they'll be able to say, okay, here, she's nice. And so if this was the extended or essay response, go to the passage, look for an example, and the extended and essay responses, from my understanding, going to be mostly from informative type passages. So it wouldn't work in this case. But if you were doing it with a story, you'd say, okay, let me look at this story, and if I'm going to say that she's nice, I've got to show you in which paragraph is she nice, and explain what way she's nice by the things that she's doing and saying, and the way she's acting towards me when we're alone or when we're in the classroom or around other people. So that concludes my idea on being careful not to whiplash the reader. Which 3 ways? With run-ons, with too many ideas, I'm just beginning to enjoy one, and you move on to the next one, and by giving me the opposite of what they were asking in terms of the question or the topic if it was a prompt. So do not give the reader whiplash. Have a great day, and God bless you guys.